All right, we're sitting here the day before our Slide to Glory Combine with USA Bobsled, sitting here with Mo Merritt. She is a sports performance specialist for the USOPC. That's the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee. Mo, thank you for sitting down and joining us today.
Yeah, of course. Happy to be here, Joey. I'm just excited to get going.
The first question I want to ask, what is a sports performance specialist at the USOPC? Talk a little bit, just high level, what your job is at the
Yeah.
Olympics.
So at the USOBC, we work, the sport performance division works across all sports, all of our Olympic sports with our NGBs. And so my role uniquely, I get to work across both winter and summer. And so that designation is just, I can be extra hands on deck. I can be working on very specific projects, so pretty much along the lines that we're talking around today, talent ID, talent transfer. And that's kind of the whole of it.
Talk a little bit talent ID, talent transfer for people who might not be familiar with those terms. Dig into
Yeah.
those a little bit.
Yeah, so we have our traditional sports that I like to allude to them in terms of we have an NCAA pipeline, and athletes grow up playing at the grassroots level. They move through, end up at the collegiate level, go on to play professionally in some cases. But essentially, those sports where we have the pipelines, like to look at those as traditional. Our non-traditional sports are more like those of bobsled skeleton, boxing, aerial skiing. Those are where there are opportunities to identify outside of those traditional routes and how we can, one, offer athletes and performers an opportunity to become Olympians.
Yep.
And we think that that's a special place. So trying to be more intentional about
Yep.
that process.
Absolutely. And that's, our mission, and we believe sports is a vehicle ultimately for opportunities. And when you talk about transfer talent, you mentioned didn't mention a non-traditional sport, handball. And I would love to dive in a little bit, again, another step back, just talk a little bit about your athletic career.
Yeah.
And then, how transfer talent might have touched you as a current athlete as well before even your next role kind of within the USOPC.
Yeah, for sure. And so for me, played basketball growing up, almost nearly a single sport athlete, which I know is a topic in itself, but had the chance to explore some other sports, and basketball was for me. I knew it early on. Me, my friends, my coaches, we were all happy. And so played through high school, played in college, and had torn my ACL, had surgery the summer of the London Games. So couldn't move during opening ceremonies and watched everything there was to see at the games. And I said to myself, if I had ever stopped, I'd want to give handball a try. It was just so fascinating to me.
How did you even see handball for the first time?
Like that was it.
That was it, at the London
Watching watching the games and watching the London Games. It was just, I watched everything from rhythmic gymnastics, like everything on the board.
Yeah.
And then seeing team handball, I thought, wow, like this seems really fun, and it seems like just a team sport that I was really drawn to. And so after that, I really just really put it in my pocket, honestly. Kept playing,
Back of your
recovered from my
mind.
injury. Yeah, continuing to play collegiate basketball, and then got to a point where I graduated and was trying to figure out what was next. And I told my family it would come up every now and then and be like, yeah, when I stop playing, I'd like to play team handball. And they challenged me on that. They said, get with it or move on. So from then I Googled and looked for a tryout, an opportunity, and found that opportunity in Auburn, Alabama, where they were having a residency program that was ongoing. And so tried out there, was fortunate enough to make the team, be selected, and that resulted in me moving down to Auburn, Alabama, living there full-time, training, pursuing further my PhD as well. And so just a beautiful kind of mix of all things that
So
allowed
talk to
get
me
there.
about a little bit about that tryout process. What about that was just seeing your general athleticism? Obviously, basketball, personally, I won't say this for you, but I believe that there's some of the most explosive, transferable talents that you can build holistically as an athlete in the sport of basketball. What was that like as a tryout with both what carried over really well and then any of the skill-based, sport-specific based stuff that you had to work on? But how did that go since you already had that baseline of
Yeah.
kind of athleticism?
For sure. And I'm with you on the bias of playing basketball. It was really, you have a really broad set of skills that
Yeah.
allow you to be successful at, I believe, at a really high level. And so the agility, right, understanding how to defend others, this idea of like invasion sports, right, which is team handball is quite similar, where you have offense trying to get through past the defense. And so those types of things transferred over really well. Speed, just all those basic things. And in terms of learning and thinking the game, my experience as a point guard was quite helpful. Where I wasn't so smooth being able to throw, right? Like that's something where we don't
Yeah.
move in that manner. So
Didn't
that was
have the softball background.
yeah. We had somebody on our team that previously threw javelin who had a serious arm.
Oh, wow.
And so you have this kind of wide net of movers and performers coming in to take shape. So I would say what was helpful for me, I think, was just really having to kind of going back to that ACL injury of having a process of learning how to start from scratch. And so coming in, I knew I had a little bit of the advantage that we just talked about, but also I was open to learning more and figure out
Sure.
what that would look like. Yeah.
No, and obviously that's so key, right? Just the openness and the willingness to get better
Yeah.
and to have that type of vision. What do you see now as you've kind of transitioned with this role at the USOPC? What are some of the limiting factors or some of the barriers? You mentioned you had the exposure being at the games, you were able to see these sports, you saw the opportunities firsthand. What is it like for athletes broadly, I guess, that you've observed in terms of their knowledge of these type of opportunities? And
Yeah.
then what steps do you make to maybe increase that awareness?
Yeah, I mean, well, you alluded to it. That's the limiting factor is often just not knowing.
Yeah.
There's a lack of awareness of all the opportunities that are available. Our collegiate system kind of does a great job of broadcasting what we know, what sports are available, and at the grassroots level, those things kind of bleed down. So kids are playing sports so that they can play in college, and oftentimes, the Olympic sports that are somewhat on the periphery can go unseen. And so part of my role at the USOPC is how do we raise that awareness by sharing stories, by hosting combines in partnership with you all. We begin to increase that awareness and generate interest because there's no doubt in my mind that we have plenty of talent to be successful, right? We
Oh,
talk
yeah.
about being successful on the medal table and ways that we can figure out how to do more. And this opportunity to increase the depth of our athletes is one that we're really excited about.
Yeah. How has the collegiate environment changed? Obviously, we're here at the University of Utah. This is a unique university just because they're in Salt Lake. There's a lot of Olympic affiliation.
Yeah.
What do you see broadly across the collegiate landscape? Obviously, they're working more and more to provide more opportunities. But how are you seeing things shift at the college level?
Yeah, well, it's honestly a little too early for us to tell, but figuring out that we are in support of the Olympic sports because we know how valuable they are, and we know the opportunities that they provide athletes. And so for us, it's just how do we stay abreast as things change and be able to support the athletes that are both collegiate that are currently participating in collegiate athletics and also have come from those systems. But we're really interested in just being very keen on the continuing progress. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you go about educating? We're working with the strength and conditioning staff here, but a lot of the stories that we've heard come firsthand from a strength and conditioning coach that might know about some of these opportunities athletes have been placed. How do you work with these different groups to increase awareness or understand or recruit or build more pathways? Obviously athletes are at the university to compete in one specific sport,
Yep.
so you don't want to go too far in terms of educating opportunities that might be distracting. What is the balance, or what kind of role do you play in working with these type of teams?
Yeah, and it's been a learning experience for me as I continue to operate in this space. But
Sure.
the first is really just showing up.
Yeah.
Right, you show up and you have the conversation.
Being visible.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and it's the hardest thing, but it's the main thing that has to happen. And so for us, and we've seen in talking to some of our athletes that have made the transition, is that, and much like myself, is that they saw an opportunity and it kind of resonated, right? It's not always a full go immediately, but they seen something and it resonated. And oftentimes there's also someone who invited them in, right? Somebody from that community, such as a strength and conditioning coach who saw an opportunity to say, hey, this could be this could be a space for you to do something that you hadn't thought of. Have you considered being an Olympian? And I think third is that a lot of our athletes, there is a drive to become an Olympian. They want to perform at the greatest stage. And so why not provide an opportunity to be able to do so? And so those types of conversations are the ones that we're having with the strength and conditioning staff, also other admin and leaders within the athletics landscape. But just continuing to have that conversation and providing opportunities are the biggest things.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about just any specific, when we talk to athletes that are at this stage in college, and they're getting to the end of their career, it's really in two waves. Either they're completely open to any opportunity and want to compete,
Yeah.
or they're completely maybe proactively a little shut down. Maybe they didn't make that one, professional or the outcome that they were really searching for within their sport. And they might not believe that they actually do have a chance. Can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about, whether it's specific athletes or general stories that excite you and you really are trying to replicate, whether it's bobsled or any other of the
Yeah.
sports that you help do this with? Is there any that come to mind, any success stories where you and the team are saying, hey, this is really impactful, we need to double down or kind
Yeah.
of, increase awareness in these areas?
Yeah. I can speak for my own story first and just say I
Yeah.
think coming out of college, I was actually done with basketball. I wanted nothing to do with it. And I think that it's a space where you commit so much of your life to sport that you want to be okay with stepping away from something. And for me, I was, but then I had this thought of, okay, what if I did something different? And wanted to take that approach to it. And so for me, it was having the ability to step back, refresh, having that year or time off, and then going, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to commit to something, ready to give more of myself to that. And I think that within the Olympic landscape, we have to understand that it takes time, right? It's probably going to take more time than it took you just within your collegiate career. And so just wanting to be aware of that. When I think of other spaces that we have recently kind of collaborated on, was boxing was another one, where we identified a large group of athletes and helped them dwindle down to invite 10 to camp, and then had 3 selected. And so one of our current athletes working through his process is 6'8". Right, so we're looking for a heavyweight, and boxing helped us identify some of the athlete
And didn't he have a
characteristics.
soccer background?
I believe he had a soccer
Yeah.
background. Yeah, and he had thought about boxing as part of his weight loss journey, and now fast forward a year later, he's on the pathway and going through his process. So really excited for that story.
Yeah. Well, and with some athletes as well, I love your thoughts, but obviously it takes time to ramp up, but because of their background on the development side, they actually can come in with extremely high potential
Yeah.
based off of the foundation that they've built. Talk a little bit about just the potential to overlap, and as we continue to identify good types of archetypes or athletes and showcasing more opportunities, just the level for athletes, even though they might not be familiar. I think about like the skill side and then the development side, how that can actually translate from
Yeah.
a better development background.
Yeah, for sure. And I think bobsled skeleton is probably the best example of that. Within just a few months, an athlete can transition to be on a World Cup level based on their sprinting background
Yeah.
and athletics, right? And we've seen that over and over again. But I think, and that was based on a combine that we ran last year and had an athlete had a lot of success, Hunter Powell. Moving forward, Keisha, right, came on as a former track and field athlete.
Yep.
Not only has she had success but now she's moved into a pilot's role, and now has made that transition even faster, securing one world championships this past season. So
Yeah.
talk about not only just the baseline, that level of entry, but then the amount of successes she can have relatively quickly. And so I think that's a true testament to that, how quickly that process can occur.
And to the point you said, telling those stories and sharing those journeys. So for more athletes, they are able to see that and think to themselves, this could be me. If this athlete who came from this background could do it, why not me?
Yeah.
Talk a little bit, I guess, last question here, or last kind of thought. Just how does that become more relatable to an athlete, being able to see that? Obviously there's the combine type of touch. Are there any other type of outreach or campaigns or anything that you've seen to be effective outside of the individual touch, or sharing athlete stories that would come to
Yeah.
mind?
Yeah, I think those are the starter pack, working with you guys as a partner here, and another one. But it's a blend. It's a blend of all the things, right? We're pulling all the levers to be able to access these athletes and promote that awareness. Obviously, the success of the games only comes once every 4 years, every 2 years if we're thinking winter, summer. And it's just identifying those consistently and elevating those voices. I think a home game is going to make that really even more effective, as we have the next 2 years, and then to looking down at Salt Lake as well.
Definitely exciting times.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Mo, for joining
course.
us. And we'll be on the field tomorrow testing for the Slide to Glory Combine. So thanks for joining us. Thanks again.
Yeah. Thanks, Joey.
That's it.